Another real quick one today. I'm just going to read two things. One, the 2-page transcript from Blake's deposition. And as expected, even though attorneys are limited to what they're allowed to object to in a deposition, we find her objecting, and I'm sure it was a miserable experience the whole day because of it. I'm just going to read it really quick. Brian Friedman. When did the smear campaign end? Ezra. Objection. Blake. It doesn't feel like it's ended. Brian. It's still ongoing? Blake. It feels that way, yes. Brian. Who do you believe is involved in the ongoing smear campaign? Ezra. Objection to the extent that calls for attorney-client privileged communications. You can answer if you can answer that question without revealing attorney-client privileged information. Blake. I believe, outside of what I know through attorneys, I believe that the defendants are involved. Brian. Which ones? Blake. All of them. And I believe you are. Brian. And what is the basis for your belief that all of the defendants and myself are involved in an ongoing smear campaign? Ezra. Same objection. And I'm having to object with respect to attorney-client privilege. If you can answer that question without revealing a client-attorney privileged communications, you can answer. Blake. Outside of what I know through my attorneys, I believe the act of a retaliatory lawsuit and the press that you've done and the statements that you've made about me and my character have felt incredibly retaliatory. Brian. What about the defendants? What did they do that's part of the ongoing smear campaign? Blake. Like I said, outside of conversations with my attorney, I'm unable to answer that. Now I know that there could be something that she and her attorneys have discussed that they don't want to talk about, but since there's been so much fighting over discovery, we've seen the requests of what they've asked for pretty extensively, more than we usually get to see in a case. We also see the things that they're trying to compel. I also know from personal experience that I was accused of being part of a smear campaign. She said I was in communication with Wayfair. She said my name was on a list and that's why I received a subpoena. She said I was being paid by Wayfair. None of that was true. Now we have people from Argentina getting subpoenaed? I mean, how ridiculous is that? Do we really think that Wayfair is paying people in Argentina to smear Blake in Spanish? More than ever, with this information, I think it's pretty given that they have nothing. I wish we had a few more pages because obviously this conversation went on a little before this and a little after, but really, this is sad. It feels retaliatory because she doesn't like it, and so that's what tells her that it's a smear campaign, because it feels retaliatory. It's not retaliatory. We looked at the rules of conduct for attorneys and saw that after an event in judicial proceedings or when something's been said by the other side, attorneys have the right to defend their clients to the point necessary to remove prejudice. We saw this. So the things that he says to try to remove prejudice from his client cannot be considered retaliation. She doesn't like the way it feels, and so she thinks that it's retaliation. It's just unpleasant, Blake. Welcome to the world. People say not nice things all the time on the internet. It happens to me. Almost every video I post now. Is that retaliation? Just like she felt uncomfortable at times, and if you look at the times she stated, she's uncomfortable because she's being told no about things, and she's not getting her way about things. And so she feels uncomfortable, and so she says it was SH. And now this, she doesn't like when someone defends his client, she doesn't like the way it makes her feel, and so she says it's retaliation. And it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The other thing I want to read real quick is Perez's letter. And I'm going to say something real quick. I know there's a lot of criticism going around and there's starting to be a lot of fighting amongst the content creators. And you guys know how I feel about drama. I have absolutely zero tolerance for it. Zero tolerance. But I want to say, I know how it felt for me when I received a subpoena. And I recognize that every one of us who received a subpoena had our own fears, our own pain, our own upset, personalized to each of us individually. It wasn't worse for one than it was another, but we all may have felt it differently. But it's not up to anyone else to decide how a person who is subpoenaed reacted. It's none of our business. Those of us who were subpoenaed were responsible for our own reactions and for how we chose to deal with it. But even amongst us who were subpoenaed, it's not my business how any of the other 106 react. It was only my business how I chose to react. So I'm not for this criticism of how someone's dealing with it. It's a very individualized thing according to how we felt about it and according to our personalities and how we deal with things. And that's all I'm going to say about it. It's nobody's business to criticize anyone else's reaction to being subpoenaed. Also, I know a lot of people were clutching their pearls with the way that I spoke to a federal judge. I knew things were being said. I chose not to go seek it out to read about it. Some people put it in comments to me, but I didn't care. I still don't care. I don't care who you are or what you do for work. If you mop a floor, scrub a toilet, or put on a fancy robe and judge other people, we are all humans and we are all equal. I've watched judges who deserve respect and honor, and I've seen judges who do not. When I was a child, I was told to respect adults. And even as a child, I knew that some of the adults that I had to listen to and be respectful to didn't deserve my respect. But I was a child. I'm not a child anymore. And if you don't act in a way that deserves my respect, I don't care who you are. You're not better than me, and you're not more important than me. And if you don't act in a way that deserves my respect, you will not get it. The things that are happening with this case and this docket and these subpoenas, these unlawful subpoenas that are being allowed by this judge, are enraging. And for everyone who's affected by it, especially people with children being affected by it, they have a right to get upset. I don't care what anybody's done. You do not punish their children. That is just off limits. Absolutely off limits. Protect children at all cost. This is despicable that Ezra put his kids on there. There's no excuse for it. He had voiced to the court in the first serious video I've ever seen him make. When he spoke about his letter about protecting his children, he introduced it saying he was going to speak seriously because it was serious, and he did. So Ezra knew that this was his kryptonite, and that's exactly what she put on the docket at her first opportunity. And it's disgusting, and there's no excuse that those pictures have sat on the docket all this time. The stuff that's allowed to sit on that docket, all of the doxing, and now minor children, there is no reason he should have to respect this judge for allowing this to happen. This is all in the judge's hands. He sure did sua sponte that document right out when it dealt with Taylor Swift, didn't he? No one had to ask him to strike that. He was asked to strike one thing, and then he continued to strike all on his own without being asked. But he can let all this doxing and minor children stay on the docket? No, it's not okay. So I'm going to read this letter. It says, updated, minor children, request to redact, request for sanctions. Judge Lyman, I, Mario Armando Lavandera, Jr., known professionally as Perez Hilton, write as a non-party in Lively vs. Wayfarer Studios, then it has the number, to respectfully inform the court that Blake Lively and her legal team have endangered the safety of my minor children and immediate action is needed. I repeat, immediate action is needed. On August 6th, I previously shared this concern with Your Honor, but that was ignored. See Exhibit A, which I'm sending alongside this request. The request from earlier this week was not docketed, nor was any response by Your Honor communicated to me in any way. And that's what he does when he doesn't want to deal with something. He just ignores it. Our letters asking for a protective order and for this situation to be dealt with because Ezra withdrew the subpoena so that it didn't have to be dealt with in the court, which is a tricky move. And we also asked for sanctions, not addressed at all. She mentioned it in passing in a footnote. The judge hasn't mentioned it at all. He doesn't want to rule on it, because if he does, he might have to put a stop to this Costco subpoena. So he won't. And now he doesn't want to deal with this, so he didn't. What in the world? I'm aware that my colorful language probably played a part in this court's decision to seemingly put my children at risk by ignoring my previous request. That is why I'm submitting this now with language that is in accordance with Your Honor's instruction. And I'm hopeful this court will do the right thing. I'm hopeful but not confident. So I'm informing Your Honor that I'm sharing this communication publicly, and I will also be advocating on behalf of my children with the press as to how this court responds to my sensible and pressing request. Blake Lively is a mother of 4, and she publicly talks about her children in interviews. I don't know what kind of parent she is, but I can assure this court that I'm a good father, and I'm genuinely worried for the safety of my 12-year-old son, 10-year-old daughter, and 7-year-old daughter. At the behest of Miss Lively, her lawyers filed on your docket multiple pictures of my children. Why? How is that relevant to this case whatsoever? As I previously informed Your Honor, and it is very important, this court understand and acknowledge co-defendant Steve Sarowitz suffered an attempted kidnapping of his daughter just a few months ago, and the alleged culprit referenced Miss Lively and this case. Your Honor could get all the details from him directly or Brian Friedman. Also see Exhibit B, which I'm sending along with this request. My fear and worry here is no joke. It is not some ploy for attention. I move this court to demand that Miss Lively's counsel, Ezra Hudson, refiled Exhibit C and D in Docket 565. She may resubmit without the pictures of my children. She could have done this already, but she didn't. On purpose. Yes, because this is a choice. Does she have children? I don't understand how a mother could do this. No matter how nasty of a person you are, how could you do this to children? Like I said, Perez has enemies from the past. People that might seize on this opportunity at seeing a way to hurt him. The world is ugly. This is despicable. Miss Lively and her legal team have taken away my agency. I choose to share my children on social media, if and how and when I want. Miss Lively and her high-priced lawyers should know better. They do know better. This move on their part was cruel and calculated. This is very well written. I do not want my young children on this court's docket in a case that is being watched closely by passionate observers, many of whom are very dangerous individuals. And that's what I said back when I heard about it, because right away people started saying, well, he shares his children on social media. That's his business. It's his choice. And what he shares on his stuff has nothing to do with anybody else being allowed to post his children on this docket that millions of people are watching. This docket, where people have been doxxed that allowed them to be targeted with death threats, arson, kidnapping threats, extortion threats. It's disgusting. In addition to the scary kidnapping threat, Mr. Sarowitz already had a fire intentionally set at his home by a deranged criminal in May of this year, referred to Exhibit B again. And many of the parties and non-parties as well in this litigation have received death threats in 2025. You can confirm that with the Wayfair defendants, as the media has reported on these threats. See Exhibit C, which I'm sending along with this request. Shame on Blake Lively and Ezra Hudson for exposing my vulnerable young family to such a risk. Shame on them. Additionally, for the reasons I stated above, I also implore this court impose the strongest sanctions against Miss Hudson and all of Miss Lively's lawyers, as Your Honor is able to do with your inherent powers over this court. Imposing sanctions would send a clear and powerful message to Miss Lively's attorneys that their dangerous behavior, which also includes consistently sharing on this court's docket the home addresses of parties and non-parties in this litigation, must stop. Hopefully, Your Honor takes my request seriously now. With grave concern, Mario Armando Lavandera Jr., a.k.a. Perez Hilton. Wonderfully, wonderfully written. And it's a joke that a federal court in New York has this little control over their docket.